When I started my channel around 1.5 years ago, I mentioned that I would decide after being in Alaska for 2 years whether I would stay there or whether I would go back to Austria. I didn't want to decide earlier because there was no need to rush a decision. Even if during the first week I was here, I realized I probably wasn't going to be leaving Alaska. And in the past few months, I kind of dropped hints in some of my videos mentioning what my future plans are, so I don't think it's any secret what my final decision is. You may be wondering what, if anything, do I miss from Austria after living there for 32 years? Honestly, I'm surprised myself that it's not very much, despite how much I loved living in Austria. I miss some of the foods like schnitzel and some of the sauces they put on meats. I can make schnitzel here in the US, but I can't find the same breadcrumbs, which to me taste very different than the American breadcrumbs. There's no way for me to make any of my favorite sauces here. And I miss Milka chocolate, but I actually have seen that in a few stores in Anchorage, but I forgot to buy it before I left. Milka chocolate will always be the best chocolate you've ever eaten. I miss riding my bike, and that's a difficult thing to do where I live now. It's not impossible, but you're not really driving on the smooth bike paths I'm used to in Austria, but instead on rough dirt trails that make your butt feel like it was kicked 45 times by a wild bull. In addition to that, there's so few months here in the interior where it's warm enough to ride a bike comfortably. Another thing I miss is having pets. I've had pets my whole life since I've been a little kid. I waited for my last cat to pass away before I left Austria, and I look forward to getting a boatload of animals once I have my own place. That may be the thing I miss the most out of everything. The other two things I miss from Austria are more important than any foods or hobbies, and that would be I miss my free healthcare. Although free is a little misleading because it's not actually free, but it's so cheap that to any American, it can be considered free. The funny thing is, despite not having health insurance at the moment because I'm waiting to hear from Medicaid due to how little I earn with my European paycheck, but I actually get cheaper health care now at the health clinics here than I did when I was back in Austria. The other important thing I miss from Austria is a little bit of security. And by that, I mean if you lose your job in Austria, to make a long story short, you receive about 60% of your paycheck if you go on unemployment. So you don't risk running into money problems or losing your house or your car unless you were already living at a higher cost than you could afford when you were working. And even after 6 or 8 months, you would be dropped to welfare as well as receive assistance from the city for your home bills and other necessities. And that kind of security makes you feel a bit safer, knowing that in the worst case scenario, you're going to be okay until you find a new job. But I'm staying in Alaska, because that first week I was in Alaska, driving from Fairbanks to Whittier to Valdez, is when I realized there is no possible way for me to see everything I want to see in Alaska, even in 2 years. I want to go to places like the town of Eagle, 6 hours off the main highway and about 10 hours from where I am now. I'd like to drive one day to Prudhoe Bay, which is about a 13-hour drive. I'd like to drive through the entire Kenai Peninsula, but just getting to the top of it will take me about 6 hours, and I'll need at least 2 or 3 weeks to drive through it all. I look forward to visiting Barrow, which I would have to fly to. I also would like to visit Kodiak Island, but I still have to drive down to the bottom of the Kenai Peninsula and then take a ferry. I've heard that Paxson Lake is a beautiful place to visit, which takes about 5 hours to reach. And something that's very important for me to do is to drive 24 hours to Hyder, which lies on the Canadian border, and then drive over into Canada and take a train as far north into Canada as I can go to a small village located there. And there's a lot of places in between the places I mentioned that I also want to stop by and visit. And I would also like to go back to a few places that I've already seen before. I'd like to go and visit Valdez in the summertime, an 8-hour drive away, as well as Whittier, which is 5.5 hours away. That's just to name a few. And because Alaska is so large and many of these places are very far from the next place, it's difficult to see more than a few of them during the short summers while working. That's why I mentioned in previous videos about beginning to search for my own piece of property starting this spring. I'm not going to be leaving Alaska anytime soon. What happens in 5 years or 10 years is anyone's guess, including my own. I've been planning what to do and how to do it years before I got to Alaska to make sure I was able to do what I wanted once I got here. And I had to continue doing that since I've been in Alaska to make sure I was able to do what I wanted and stay where I wanted while I've been here. And that's all been fun, and it was necessary. But I am looking forward to getting back to the life I've lived my entire life once I get settled down, which is not so much planning and a little more, let's just see what happens tomorrow.